In our last video, we saw that Vasco da Gama reached Indian coast at Calicut. Vasco da Gama was born in 1460 in Portugal. He was the son of a minor nobleman and had a background in navigation and exploration. Known for his determination and bravery, Gama was chosen by King Manuel I to find a sea route to India. His expertise in navigation and his boldness made him the perfect candidate for this challenging mission. And he had achieved just that. When Vasco da Gama first arrived in Calicut in May 1498, he was full of hope. Surely we will be welcomed with open arms, he thought. Gama brought gifts like 4 cloaks of scarlet cloth, coral beads, brass vessels, a box of sugar, 2 casks of oil, a barrel of honey, and casks of wine, hoping to impress the Zamorin, the local ruler who was also known as Samudri Raja. But when he presented these gifts, they seemed modest and unimpressive compared to the luxurious items the Zamorin was accustomed to. The Zamorin looked at the gifts and said, "Is this all you have brought?" Gama realized he had underestimated the wealth and standards of the local court. The Arab traders, who had been trading with the Zamorin for years, saw the Portuguese as unwelcome newcomers trying to steal their business. The rocky start set the stage for tension and conflict between the Portuguese and the local trading community. What further complicated the situation was that the Portuguese expeditions were not solely motivated by economic gain. King Manuel I and the explorer were also driven by a strong religious zeal. The aim was to spread Christianity and counter the influence of Islam, which dominated the Indian Ocean trade routes. Vasco da Gama and his successors carried with them the fervor to convert the local populations and establish Christian dominance, backed by the blessings and support of the Catholic Church. Despite the rocky start, Vasco da Gama managed to convince the Zamorin to allow him to trade. He loaded his ships with valuable spices like pepper and cinnamon and left Calicut in August 1498. After almost a year, he arrived back in Portugal in September 1499. The King of Portugal, Manuel I, was impressed by the wealth Gama brought back. "We need to secure our presence in India," he declared and decided to send another expedition. Pedro Álvares Cabral was chosen to lead the fleet. Cabral set sail from Lisbon in March 1500. Pedro Álvares Cabral was a Portuguese nobleman born around 1467. He came from a family with a strong military background and was well versed in both navigation and leadership. Cabral was known for his diplomatic skills and his ability to command respect. His inclination towards exploration and his experience in naval affairs made him an ideal choice to lead the next expedition to India. Cabral's mission was not only to establish trade but also to expand Portuguese influence in the region. Cabral sailed around the Cape of Good Hope. He reached Calicut in September 1500. Cabral brought more lavish gifts, including gold, silver, and fine textiles. He was sure that the gifts would surely impress Zamorin. Cabral managed to establish a trading post in Calicut, marking the beginning of a more permanent Portuguese presence. But in December 1500, violence erupted when the Portuguese trading post was attacked by local Arab merchants and their allies. The attack was motivated by growing tensions and competition over control of the lucrative spice trade, as the arrival of the Portuguese threatened the established trade networks controlled by Arab and local merchants. Furious at the attack, Cabral retaliated decisively. He seized and destroyed 10 Arab merchant ships anchored in the harbor, killing their crews and taking their cargo. To demonstrate Portuguese power, Cabral ordered the bombardment of Calicut. The Portuguese ships, equipped with superior cannons, launched missiles from the sea, causing significant damage to the city. Additionally, Cabral blockaded the port of Calicut, cutting off vital trade routes. Realizing that maintaining a presence there amid such hostility was unsustainable, Cabral decided to leave Calicut. We need a more welcoming place, he thought, and sailed to Cochin. In Cochin, the local ruler, the Raja, welcomed the Portuguese, seeing them as allies against the more powerful Zamorin of Calicut. The Portuguese quickly learned to exploit these internal rivalries among Indian rulers to their advantage, establishing a stable foothold on the Malabar coast. After Cabral's departure from Calicut in early 1501, the Portuguese focused on consolidating their presence along the Malabar coast. They set up a fortified trading post in Cochin and in 1502 fortified Cananore and Quilon, aiming to control these critical trade routes. The Portuguese built alliances with local rulers, leveraging their military strength to support these allies against rivals. By 1502, the Portuguese had established a strong network of fortified trading posts and strategic alliances, setting the stage for a more aggressive expansion. In February 1502, Vasco da Gama set out on his second voyage to India, this time with a fleet of 20 heavily armed ships. The fleet's mission was clear: enforce Portuguese dominance over the Indian Ocean trade and demonstrate their military might. Among his orders was to demand reparation from the Zamorin of Calicut for the murder of Portuguese men and to expel Muslim traders from the region. The Portuguese harbored intense hatred towards the Muslim traders due to their control over the lucrative trade routes that the Portuguese sought to control. This animosity also had deep historical roots. The Portuguese, like much of Christian Europe, had a long standing history of conflict with Muslim powers, dating back to the Crusades and the Reconquista. This historical context further fueled the Portuguese determination to challenge and diminish Muslim power in any sphere they encountered. There was also a misconception among the Portuguese that the Zamorin of Calicut might be a Christian. This belief stemmed from their limited understanding of the region's complex religious landscape and their hope to find potential allies among the local rulers. However, they soon realized that the Zamorin was a Hindu ruler with his own established political and economic interests, which did not align with the Portuguese agenda. The journey took Gama's fleet through the perilous waters of the Indian Ocean. After dealing with various local rulers along the eastern coast of Africa with a show of force, Gama's fleet reached the Anjadiva Islands near Karwar of today's Karnataka in September 1502.
They made a base here and then left towards Kannanore. They camped near Mount De Eli. They waited for something, anything.
It was here that one of the most infamous incidents occurred. Gama encountered the Miri, a large ship returning from Mecca with about 240 men, women, and children, many of whom were wealthy merchants from Calicut. The Miri surrendered without a fight, expecting to pay a customary toll. However, Gama had other plans. He demanded all the wealth on the ship and refused any offers made by the passengers. They tried to negotiate, offering substantial sums and hostages. But Gama's motives were not purely economic. His actions were driven by a deep seated hatred for Muslims, stemming from centuries of conflict during the Reconquista in the Iberian Peninsula, and a desire to establish Portuguese and Christian dominance in the Indian Ocean. Ignoring their pleas, Gama ordered the Miri to be bombarded. The ship's passengers fought back fiercely but were ultimately overpowered. Demonstrating the ruthlessness of the Portuguese, Gama ordered the ship to be burned with all its passengers on board. As the flames consumed the Miri, Gama watched impassively, sending a clear and brutal message to all who dared to oppose Portuguese authority. This incident, marked by extreme cruelty, was a turning point. Gama's refusal to accept the passengers' offers highlighted that his true intent was religious and political domination. The Portuguese sought to eradicate Muslim influence and establish themselves as the supreme power in the region. The burning of the Miri became a symbol of Portuguese ruthlessness and their uncompromising strategy to control the Indian Ocean trade. After the Miri incident, Gama continued his mission to assert Portuguese dominance. He began attacking any Arab and other trading ships he encountered, forcing them to come to terms with him through displays of military power. This aggressive tactic ensured that many traders would comply with Portuguese demands to avoid destruction or seizure. In 1502, he introduced the Cartaz system, a form of naval trade licensing that required all ships passing through the Indian Ocean to obtain a permit from the Portuguese. This move was aimed at controlling and taxing maritime trade, effectively monopolizing the spice trade routes. The Portuguese collected fees and taxes through this system, ensuring a steady income from the vast trading network. Gama aggressively enforced this system, using his naval power to compel compliance. He negotiated with local rulers and traders, but when met with resistance, he did not hesitate to use force. The Portuguese navy attacked and seized ships that refused to comply with the Cartaz system, further establishing their control over the region. Gama's negotiations often took a hard line. In Kannanur, he managed to secure a trade agreement with the local ruler, promising Portuguese protection in exchange for support and compliance with the Cartaz system. However, in Calicut, the Zamorin continued to resist Portuguese demands. In early 1503, frustrated by the Zamorins' defiance, Gama launched another series of attacks on Calicut. The Portuguese navy bombarded the city, causing significant destruction. Despite the fierce resistance, the Portuguese firepower and naval tactics proved superior. However, the Zamorin did not agree to the Cartaz system. The resistance from Calicut persisted, and the relationship between the Portuguese and the Zamorin remained hostile. Gama's relentless aggression did not secure the compliance of Calicut, but it did establish Portuguese dominance in other parts of the region. Gama's actions eventually led to the establishment of a Portuguese stronghold in Cochin, where the local ruler welcomed Portuguese support against the Zamorin. This strategic alliance allowed the Portuguese to maintain a significant presence on the Malabar coast. By August 1503, Gama had effectively set the groundwork for Portuguese dominance in the Indian Ocean. His fleet, having secured key trade routes and established the Cartaz system in compliant regions, prepared to return to Portugal. Gama left India in September 1503, carrying a valuable cargo of spices and leaving behind a legacy of Portuguese control that would shape the region's trade dynamics for years to come. In just a few years, Vasco da Gama transformed the Portuguese approach from humble traders to aggressive enforcers of naval dominance.